There are technologies out there that you already know about, but are so rare that when you run across them in the wild, they still seem like magic. This is one of those technologies. And I'm going to try to blow it up. Even a small channel like mine gets offered to review products pretty frequently, and more often than not, I tend to turn them down, simply because it's not in line with what you all would be interested in. Now, there's a company called Sterling Kits that sells some really cool engine models. Some even actually run. There are some successful channels out there that feature some of Sterling Kits models with millions of views. Johnny Q90 comes to mind. I have to admit, I was pretty surprised when Sterling Kits hit me up, and of course they looked at our little channel here and offered up an educational engine model. Well, yeah, that could be cool. I built a visible V8 when I was about 9 years old. And while we're all about cars, racing, and power, if you're a frequent flyer on my channel here, you'll know we do things, well, a bit differently. Yep, that works.
But my entire house smells of burnt electronic pixies. This is a straight up hole.
After poking around on their site, the Stark 41 magnetic high-speed brushless levitation motor most definitely caught my eye. After all, for our electric superchargers, we need high speed and high power, and we're on the bleeding edge of what's possible with commonly available stuff. But magnetic bearings? Stark 41, you say? Some people have commented I sound a bit like Tony Stark. Except for maybe now, because I'm still recovering from that bronchitis. But nonetheless, this seemed like a great match. So without further ado, here it is. Now this is actually how it came. No assembly really was required at all, although, truth be told, I did do a little bit of modification already, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Alright, so the number one feature of this thing is, of course, the magnetic bearings. So this is the rotor, and it floats literally on air. See if I can get you a good view of that right there. You can see the end of this rotor is literally just inside that magnet, and it's just floating there. It's actually quite a strong magnet, I'm not going to lie. That takes some effort to move that. And there's one point of contact, and that's back here. Right at the very back, there's just a single point of contact with what I initially thought was just a brass point. And I don't know if this part here is actually glass on this plexiglass or what it is, but that's what it rotates on. Now, the one modification I did is when this thing came in, I did notice that that was actually kind of off-center. So I took it apart, and it turns out it's just a ballpoint pen tip that is super glued into the end of the rotor shaft. The rotor shaft is actually a hollow tube. So I kind of centered it up by eye a little bit better, and that was it. And I also, of course, put this Sharpie mark on the magnet here. Now, one of the things I did, well, you know what? Let's take the rotor out. Again, this takes some effort because these magnets are actually rather strong. But this is, let's get this thing out of the way. This is fundamentally the rotor. That's all there is to it. You can see it's actually reacting to the, there's a metal bar under my desk that it's trying to stick to. This is an incredibly strong set of magnets. Now, the reason for the Sharpie mark, of course, is we're going to put a tachometer on this thing, and we want to know how fast it goes and how fast we can make it go. Bend technology to our whims until it gives up and blows up. So anyway, so that's the rotor, right? So one of the things I wanted to initially do was get it, hold on. There we go. Was to get a compass and put it next to this thing. Well, I did get a compass and it just went freaking haywire. So instead, I got this little tiny magnet here. What makes it a magnet? Well, there you go. There's your proof that it is in fact a magnet. And you know, I was going to, you can see it actually reacts, the rotor reacts to the magnet. But to give you an idea of how strong this rotor is, watch this. I can actually move it further away and closer to me just by spinning the rotor. Oop, didn't mean to do that. There's going to be a lot of that in this video, I bet. But again, I mean, look, that's not like a trick. That's how strong this magnet is. It's absolutely nuts. And it's pretty cool. I mean, this thing is definitely, it gives up some functionality. It is actually for demonstration purposes, just to look cool. I mean, the thing looks cool. The coils look really cool. It's very kind of intelligently built out of, you know, available hobbyist type stuff. I went through the circuitry already, and this is how I know we're going to really push this thing. It's basically just a Hall effect sensor that interacts with the coil, and the coil, of course, is triggered by this MOSFET. And it interacts with the magnet in the rotor, and that's what makes it spin. And, of course, the magnet that's still on my desk. Dance for my amusement. Dance! Dance! Okay, stop it. Anyway. So here's the 5-volt adapter it came with. Surprisingly, it's rated at 5 amps. That'd be 25 watts. That'd be quite a lot of current. So I already looked up the data sheets on the MOSFET on the Hall effect sensor. The weak link is the Hall effect sensor. It caps out at 18 volts. The MOSFET's good for like something like 60 volts or 70 volts at like 80 amps. So we're going to push this thing now. The whole point here is not to blow it up just to blow it up, but to see how fast we can get this thing going. So I'm going to set a limit of 18 volts. I don't know if the LED is probably going to give out before that, but that should just be an indicator. There's nothing on the underside of this circuit board. There's really not much to this thing electrically, which I really like. I mean, it shows the simplicity. So you just lay this out in a more efficient manner, and this could be something that we could actually use for our electric turbo / supercharger experiments. Maybe make some power with it. So here's my bench supply plug, currently off. Gonna turn it's set to 5 volts at 5 amps. Okay, you see the rotor go. You just bring this thing next to the coil, and she spins right up. Now, obviously, you can hear it's a bit out of balance, but it's only drawing about 170 milliamps. But the question is, how fast is that? Well, we have our handy-dandy modified optical tachometer that we use for our electric turbo testing. Let's just rig that up here with this helping hand. Okay, so that should be close enough. Let's just put this in position. I love how it just starts up on its own. That's kind of cool. There we go. So we are 10,700 RPM. They said it was fast. That's actually kind of frighteningly fast for something that's this obviously experimental. Just moving the sensor around the coils. Can we get 11,000? Yep, there you go. There's your 11,000. All right. Let's hang this thing on one of these bolts just so it spins on its own. Because let's take a look and see what's going on with the coil and the signal going to it. Now, the easiest way to do it is just to bust out with my small oscilloscope here. Okay, so I happen to have an inductor that was sitting on my desk. This is actually from Serwin Vega speaker crossover because I'm weird like that. It's got the magnet stuck to it. Let's see what we get. Alright, so our time base is too fast, so let's go ahead and speed that up. (10 milliseconds). Let's go ahead and change the scale. So there's a 0.5 volt per division. That just happens to be what it's picking up. Let's take a look at our so our frequency is 166, 167, 168, and we're just over 10,000 RPM. 170, we're at 10,303. 172, 10,300 and thereabouts. So let's say 170 is our average and we're just over 10,000 RPM. Let's shut this thing off. This is the other thing that's weird. Once it gets out of that vibration harmonic, it just spins for quite a while until it hits the next harmonic. There it is. All right, so we were at what, 170 hertz. So that is one complete sine wave, and that is probably one commutation because this is most likely a two-pole magnet. So let's say 170, that's 170 hertz, so that's per second. So multiply it times 60 to get to minutes, and that's 10,200 RPM. Kind of frighteningly close to what we were seeing on the TAC. The math works. Now, let's see how fast we can make this thing go. This is where it's going to get fun. All right, let's turn the power back on. Remember, we're only at 5 volts. The Hall effect sensor can handle 18 volts, and we're under 200 milliamps. There we go, we're back up. Oh, before we attempt to blow this thing up, I want to show you guys something pretty cool. So if you take the Hall effect sensor and you flip it around like that, it changes direction. Isn't that cool? All right, so under 200 milliamps. What's the best RPM we can see here? 10,000. That's right, we saw just about 11,000 before. 11,083. 11,100. Oh, and incidentally, if I bring it up by the magnet, it doesn't work. So you got to be on the coil. So let's just rest it here and let it hit stability. Seems to be oscillating. Let's start turning up the voltage. Let's go up to 5.4 volts. So this is 5.4 volts. 11,600. 11,800. Can I see 12? Give me 12,000. Come on, baby. Oh, come on. Yeah, there you go. And since that was only 5.4 volts, I can see where this is already going, and I want to keep being able to see where it's going. So, as always on this channel, on go the safety glasses. Let's go up to 6 volts. Okay, we're at 6 volts. Hitting all kinds of nasty harmonics. Can't quite get to 13,000. Let's just go 1 volt more. Let's go to 7 volts. Oh boy. We're still under 200 milliamps. We're over 14,000 RPM. 8 volts. 17,000. All right, you know what? Let's go back to an idle speed of 5 volts. I'm gonna go get me a whole face shield because this contraption is gonna definitely go over 20,000 RPM, and it's close to my face. All right. Now you're behind the face shield with me. Let's go up to 8 volts. 6, 7, 8. We're at 8 volts. 9. She's starting to break. Starting to shake. Oh, she hit another smooth bit. 10 volts, 200 milliamps. It's only 2 watts. This thing is actually pretty amazing. Half an amp, no, 400 milliamps. $12 volts. Nope, that's it. Okay, we broke it. Well, no, I don't think we actually did. But we hit 20,000 RPM. All right, Sterling kits. You guys are definitely kind of a rock star here. Let's see if it'll still run. If I can still frickin' get this thing in here. Oh, like nothing happened. Well, it's going kind of slow. Sounds different. And it's faster. Okay. Face shield back on. Did it knock itself into balance? 8 volts. Seems to be happier. Let's go back up to 12 volts. Okay, no. Yeah, now we broke it. I smell something burning. Let's shut the power off. What I smell burning, actually, isn't an electrical failure. Actually, it's this plate that it was drilling a hole into. So yeah, this thing would still work, actually. So it started boring a hole into the, let's see, I got Q-tips here. Started boring a hole into the plastic. But this thing is like lubricated with something. And I don't think, so this must be, I don't know what this is. I don't think it's glass. Definitely wore a little hole into that thing as well as into this thing. Let's see if we can get this back in. Yeah, so without this as a spacer, without this part as a spacer, it's not gonna ride straight. Let's see if I can kind of hold this in position, which I kind of have my doubts. Okay, so now there's literally nothing holding that plate in place, just the force of the magnets and the thrust. Let's set our voltage back down to 5. Doesn't seem to be doing as well. So let's go up in voltage. Oh, that thing's starting to move. Back to 12 volts. Eventually it's going to throw itself out. $14 volts. 16 volts. Nope. Yeah. Oh, that smells like burning plastic. Because, well, it frankly is burning plastic. Let me zoom you in here so you can see what we're doing. So I don't know if you can make that out, but it's drilled itself in there pretty good. It's making a hole is what it's doing. Let's see through it. Yeah, see, that's the back side of the hole. And it's just basically melting itself because, you know, close to 20,000 RPM is pretty darn fast. So there's your close look at the ballpoint pen tip. I think our focus point is right here. So the failure wasn't catastrophic. This thing will live to spin another day. I would have to figure out a way to glue this thing back into position. And this is obviously acrylic. This is not polycarbonate. Not sure what this is, but I'll have to figure out a way to reattach it. And it had some kind of lubricant on it, so I'm not even gonna try to glue it back on. It's just gonna keep falling off until I clean it off and go through those experiments. But it all survived, and this is actually really cool. This has got me thinking about other possibilities, particularly for what we're doing. You know, I mean, you put an impeller on the end of this thing, and you basically have no resistance. There's no heat in the bearings, obviously. The only resistance is air resistance. This is really cool. And you do something like an axial flux improvement. That's a video for another time. But where you position the coil differently to make the whole system more efficient, because here you've got, you know, magnetism just flying all over the place, pretty much stray flux everywhere. But you figure out a way to really condense it right onto where it needs to be, because these magnets have nothing to do with it spinning. Their only purpose is to function as bearings. So there's no heat. The only resistance, the only friction is air resistance. So you're not going to get much more efficient than that in an atmosphere. It's just not going to be possible. So check out Sterling Kits. They have a lot of cool stuff like this. Maybe we'll get some more stuff from them. I don't know. And in case you're wondering, the meth injection is almost fully installed. We're going to try to take this thing to the dyno before my next trip down to Texas, which is going to be in about a month or so. And hopefully we can see what kind of power that thing makes, both with the meth injection and with the volute coating. A lot of fun stuff coming up. Thanks for hanging out. I'll catch you all in the next one.